4th. So we're going to start using this room as long as the Martin County positivity rate holds good. I think this morning it just about 5% or a little under 5%. So we're definitely trending down, and what that means to us as a community is that we can go ahead and begin to use this room as long as it's safe. So do you feel pretty comfortable setting here? The room is set for 60. We could probably actually add a couple more rows, but we wanted to give you some space in between chairs and so forth. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. And first we have Bob Forbush, the chairman of our finance committee, in the room, and we have Merrill, the president of our residence council. And we also have Debbie Kennedy. She's our director of accounting in the back of the room. And she actually created this budget. So if you have any problems with it, feel free to see either Bob or Debbie. No, just kidding. It really is a collaboration. And as we know the world, it doesn't exist as we once knew it, right? It is a completely different world. And I will tell you that has made this budgeting cycle very, very difficult. And we're going to go over that in greater detail. But so the world is different now. Everything is being affected. In fact, I was in a finance committee meeting a couple of months ago, and an individual brought up the fact of how much cat food has gone up. Just, now we're not buying cat food here. It's not part of our monthly expense, but her point was that truly everything has gone up. And so we have some additional details on that, but the cost of the food, labor, benefits, transportation, and supplies. How many of you have seen those barges out in the Pacific West with our appliances that new residents are waiting for that are sitting on that? So everything has been affected. And one fact that underscores this is, how many of you knew that you were getting a raise? Have you heard that good news yet? Right? So Social Security is going up by 5.9%. So I was talking to Bob and Merrill earlier today. I'm not retired, so I don't know what the typical increase of Social Security is, but I understand that it's pretty low. So 5.9 really does begin to tell the story of what's going on and how how inflation is impacting us. So as we look at our budgeting process and take into consideration what drives our budget, right, there's revenue. Where does our revenue come from? Our revenue primarily comes from independent living, so all of you sitting in this room, and then we have our assisted living, and then we also have skilled nursing. So historically, we have performed very well with independent living. So we're going to stay true to the 95.5% occupancy. The assisted living, we pretty much have stayed at about 95%. So although we are much lower than that right now, we budgeted 95%. And then skilled nursing, I will tell you that we have been most challenged by the skilled nursing because we are largely impacted by the doctors and the elective surgeries and so forth, and what's going on at the hospital and so forth. So we have seen that probably impact us the greatest. Actually, our average occupancy is about 10% less than this 89%. So I was asked the question, are there any pain points in this budget? And I would tell you that this is probably the number one pain point for us. So we've budgeted 10% higher than what we've been historically running this past year, but we believe that as we continue to navigate COVID, that this will bounce right back. This is a very quick and easy fix as the world starts to kind of bounce back. So Additional budget assumptions, we always want to assume or plan to have the net operating income covering the capital budget. So net operating income, all your revenue in, all your expenses out, what do you have left over? Um, and the capital budget is really what we use to pay for refurbishments. This was a capital project. Buying vehicles. Those are the types of things that would be covered under a capital budget. And the goal is to have your net operating income cover your capital budget expense. We're going to get into that this year. It does not. Okay, but we'll go over that. Zero increases to FTEs, full-time equivalents. So as we're approaching this budget, it was difficult. So we didn't want to add any more expense to you. So we kept the full-time equivalents at a zero increase. Minimize expense creep, right? So over the years, expenses kind of creep up. We want to make sure that we're paying attention to that and minimize that. And then the wage benefit impact, we are at about 6.7% with the wage and benefit impact. So wage impact includes annual merit, market adjustments, wage compression, and benefits adjustment. This had the biggest impact on the budget. So budget drivers. Number one, wage and benefits, $600,000. And I'm going to go over in a few slides how that gets broken down and give you some examples of that. Food, we saw a $240,000 increase to the food. And then insurance was actually, this is actually kind of low for us, right, Debbie? Historically, it's been much higher. So we fared very well. We have a pretty good history, loss history here. I know that in other parts of the country, they experienced, double digit increases. So we're doing pretty good there, but nonetheless, it does become a driver. So key budget drivers here, as I said, wages, 600,000. So back in June or July, what was happening is our HR director was going to meetings and she was learning that Cleveland Clinic, hospice, even Wawa, some of these, Walmarts and Targets, they were actually increasing their cashiers to $15 and $17 an hour. Servers in country clubs were also being offered $15 an hour. So let me back up. There is a law that by the year 2026, the minimum wage will go to $15 an hour. So as we were coming out of COVID, or I shouldn't say coming out of COVID, as we were riding that wave with COVID and businesses were opening back up, they had to recruit staff because they laid a lot of people off. So they were recruiting staff and they were faced with the challenges of not being able to pay them what they once did. So that then impacted our ability to recruit and retain. So as we looked at this, we had to raise our servers, for instance, from $11 to $13.50 to start. Housekeepers, $11 to $13.50 to start. Certified nursing assistants, $12 to $15. Certified nursing assistants are those individuals who work in Water's Edge. Licensed practical nurse, 23 to 26. Registered nurse, 28 to 30. So, but it's not just increasing the new people that you're hiring. It's you have to address others in that department or in that job class, and it's called wage compression. So and this is just a sampling. There are other job classes that were also affected. So this just gives you an idea. The second key budget driver was food costs, right? 240,000 to be exact. Overall food costs increased by about 10%. Fish and meat, and I can remember when we were preparing this part of the budget, I remember talking to Art and Jim, and Art was telling me that, he is seeing an increase with fish and meat from $3 to $7 per pound. an increase. So, and for instance, crab and lobster, 100% increase. So, perfect storm. The other thing that impacts this is what we've seen historically pre-COVID. You all ate about 24 meals per month. Through COVID and where we're at now, we're seeing about you consuming about 28 meals per month. So that, of course, also drives up our food cost. Welcome back, Mr. Bohan. Assisted living. Now, this is a very interesting one because this is actually a reduction in our revenue, right? So we have to take this into consideration as well. And the reduction is a result of the attrition cycle. So what that means is as more people from the independent living side move over into Water's Edge and come into the assisted living, it reduces our ability to bring in private pay. That's okay though, because our first mission, our primary mission is to serve you, our life care residents. But occasionally, when we're in this cycle, it does not allow us to maximize our revenue there because we can't bring in outside private pay. So we should come out of this cycle, but nonetheless, this does impact the budget as well. Oh, I should say too, that and when we have a second person, so if you're married and your spouse goes to the assisted living, that further reduces the revenue. And it's nothing to be ashamed of, or there's nothing that we can do about it. Again, that's why we're here. We're a life plan community. It's just we have to take that into consideration when building a budget. So budget summary. So, and I kind of referenced this earlier, but resident monthly fees. So we take in all the resident income, lounge income, maintenance income, all the income from you on the independent living side. Plus we add in Water's Edge skilled revenue, plus Water's Edge assisted living revenue, the other operating revenue, and then we minus out all of the operating expenses, food, labor, electric, gas for the automobiles, all of that type of stuff. And then we come to the net operating income, and then we have the capital expenditures, as I referenced earlier, and then we either have a surplus or we have a shortfall. And obviously the goal is to create a zero-based budget, as I referenced earlier. So this is, you probably can't see this. I guess I should say that you can see it back there, Debbie? Oh, awesome. Love it. Can you see that over there? Oh my gosh. Success. All right. Wow, that kind of threw my train of thought. I was going to say that this presentation will be available to you at the front desk. So I sent it to Shauna and have asked her to print off several copies. So if you'd like to take it home and look at it more closely, you can certainly do that. So basically, this is just a budget summary in comparison. And it looks at the 2021 budget and then our projected for 2021. And then it also looks at our budget for 2022. So in the first column for 2021, we were budgeted to make $2,029,000. Now, I say make, but really that money is used for what? Capital, right? So that money is used to pay for our capital. Now, we are projecting for this year to be at 1.8. So 1,861,000. So, off from what we had budgeted. So then you might be asking, okay, well then what does that mean? Well, what it really means is that we have to adjust our capital spend. In some years we do better than that than others. But it really just, that bottom line just really gives you less money to spend on your capital expenditure. Now there are years when we exceed that, and typically we do exceed that, and then that money becomes surplus. So as I said earlier, the NOI for 2022 is $2,412,000. I want you to keep that number in your head because I'm going to come back to that and show you how the capital expenditures work for that, and then our insurance as well. So the net operating income, $2,412,000. With the influence and collaboration of the Finance Committee, we no longer pay a wind buy down premium, as the coverage versus premium expense did not make sense. So let me break that down for you. So Bob Forbush and his Finance Committee, they look at the budget and they look at insurance, and granted, over time there's become less involvement in it because it's become more automated. But this is one of the areas that I think that there was a true collaboration. And what we found is that the wind buy down premium that we were paying, which is about $500,000, it didn't have the value in coverage. So we were able to convince our corporate office, and with allowing us to essentially become self-insured for our wind buy down. So what that means is that expense is still in there. So it feeds up into the net operating income of $2,412,000, but you have to deduct it out to $500,000. So we take that $500,000 out, and now, because we're funding our insurance reserve, right? So we still have that expense, it's just moved over into another account. And the NOI then becomes $1,912,000. So, does that make sense to you? Okay, so we still have to fund our insurance, so we have to reduce the NOI, the net operating income, by that amount. So the goal is to each year over the next 3 years is to move that $500,000, put it into an insurance reserve account. So if something were to happen, we would have that money to maybe fund whatever was blown away. I think years ago we had a situation where we had to redo all of the carports. So the goal is over the next 3 years is to put that into an insurance reserve fund, and then review that and analyze, how we go forward after that. So net operating income should equal the capital expenditures. I've touched on this. When creating the budget, as I said very early on, we make the assumption, we go into it, that the NOI needs to cover the capital expenditure, but in this budget, it does not. So our net operating income that I just shared with you, because it was reduced by the insurance, was $1,912,000. But our capital expenditure is $2,229,000. And for the life of me, I don't know how we got corporate to accept this, but we did. I think probably because historically how well the community does. Would you agree, Debbie? Yep. Somehow we were able to get this through. Otherwise, we would have had to reduce our capital expenditures. So as I said, historically speaking, we have performed greater than our net operating income. And we'll just need to manage this and not overspend according to the projected net operating income. So any questions on that? Okay. So the capital expense, I've been talking a lot about that. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to the community? As I said, we've budgeted $2,229,000. And these are just a sampling of items. So atrium repair. Now you live in Waterside, so you may not know this unless you're going to visit somebody, but over in Gardens North, I believe it's primarily in Gardens North, maybe some in Gardens South, the atriums flood over. So when it storms, the storm drains are essentially, they've been plugged or clogged by the trees that were misplanted, shall we say. They should have never been planted in there. The roots have gone into the drains and affect that. So we need to address that because it's a safety issue, and we need to get that resolved. So roof replacement, just like your home, we have to continue to replace roofs. And so I believe there's one last one that we have to replace. It's Gardens, is it Gardens North, Debbie? Do you remember? Gardens North. Information technology, $100,000. So that's the second part of what we're currently working on right now, and I'll plug Aaron and Audra on this. So there has been a lot of work to lay the fiber optics for increasing or enhancing the Wi-Fi. So we are well underway with that. And I don't know, Audra, if we've got confirmation for December yet, if they're coming, but December 7th. So December 7th. So just put this on your I don't know, put this on our things to do that we need to communicate to you that come December, we're going to have a group of workers here from Single Digits, which is our information technology company that is doing this upgrade. They're going to have to go into every single apartment and to be able to implement this upgrade. But more to come on that. Apartment refurb. This is probably one of the, well, it's not probably, it is the greatest expense that we have. And a couple of years ago, we saw this spike on us. We saw it go back up because every so often, it's about an 8 to 10 year cycle. We have to change the color of cabinets. We have to change, sometimes we have to change the layout of the apartment, or we have to change lighting, or, tile in the bathrooms and so forth. So when you do that, it's going to drive your refurbishment costs back up until you're within that attrition within that cycle. And you start getting the apartments turned back over to you that have already been done. And we are seeing some of that. So my hope is that over the next several years, we'll begin to see that go down, and we can use that money to invest in the community in other ways. So the health center, we've budgeted $50,000. We've been working hard on bringing new furniture, changing out the furniture in the patient rooms. We have all new TVs in the resident rooms. We do need to do some work with the common area furniture, and the color palette needs to be changed over there and be a little bit more uplifting and so forth. The Cove, who likes the Cove in here? I guess we don't need to do it. There weren't enough hands raised. But the good news is that the Cove, we have budgeted to screen in the outdoor. And we'll have ceiling fans and so forth. So we're going to do some outside work for the Cove. I think that's something that has come up through the communication exchange and strategic planning sessions and so forth. So I got the message. That's a very important aspect of your life here at Sandhill Cove. So we've budgeted for that. Waterfront outdoor dining furniture, adding some new furniture outside of the main dining room alongside there. And then terrace accessibility. One of the things that we learned is that there's not as great of accessibility to the terrace outside the main dining room. So we've budgeted for that as well. This is just a sampling. We have, many hundreds of thousands of dollars more in this budget. So, as you're building the budget, we also look at the Consumer Price Index. How many of you have heard about the Consumer Price Index? How many of you would like to come up here and tell your neighbors about the Consumer Price Index? So the Consumer Price Index measures average change over time in prices paid by urban consumers for goods and services. Now, probably because you're probably thinking, oh, it's really high because he's bringing this up, right? I'm building my case. Chapter 651